Dia Yit. That's how we say hello in Irish. It means God be with you. And the response to that is Dia Ismuriat. Let me simplify that. Dia Ismuriat. That means God and Mary be with you. That's how we say hello in Ireland. That'll be the greeting for our group, the Lost Sheep of Jesus, the last remnant of the Catholic Church in these end times. This is TJ Delaney, leader of this group, this last remnant of Catholics in these end times. How do I know we're the last remnants of Catholics in these end times? Well, I'll have to go into that in future videos. I'll give an outline. So I was formerly with Richard O'Brien of Mary's Little Remnant. If anybody doesn't know about Richard O'Brien, they are a Sede Vacantis group. Sede Vacante means in Latin sede, chair, vacante, empty. And so they believe that Francis is not a true pope, that the chair of St. Peter is empty. Now there's many Sede Vacantis groups out there, and they disqualify anybody that's not Sede Vacantis first of all. So anybody that's still attending these churches, they believe they're not Catholic whatsoever, because I'll get into that in a second, but it's to do with heresy, apostasy, schism, idolatry. Now, most Sede Vacantis groups go back to 1958, John the 23rd, Anti-Pope John the 23rd started the Council of Vatican II. And Vatican II is incredibly evil. Okay? There's a few people that go back before Vatican II, not many. But only Richard O'Brien, goes back to 1130. Why does he go back to 1130? Well, let's not skip ahead. First of all, I want to give you an example why you consider somebody an anti-pope. So John Paul II is a very famous anti-pope. Very famous. Of the most recent claimants to the papacy. Just Google a picture of him kissing the Quran. It's the Muslim so-called holy book. He's kissing that book. And there's a billion or so Muslims out there, and they see the so-called leader of the Catholic Church kissing that book. So what is he saying to all these people? You're good with God. You don't need to convert to Catholicism. He's glorifying their book. That book contains many heresies. That is to say, teachings that directly conflict with the Catholic Church. And it doesn't conflict any more obvious than condemning the Trinity. The Quran condemns the Trinity. That's one of the most core tenets of the Catholic faith. It doesn't get more basic than that. That's a basic dogma of the Catholic Church. And he's kissing that book that condemns the Trinity. He's telling everybody that you don't need to be Catholic to be saved. He's telling everybody that he rejects the Catholic faith. Because a core tenet, again, of the Catholic faith is that God is three persons, one essence. And the Quran contradicts that. So that's heresy. And heresy, Pope Leo the Great said, and it was solemnly defined. I must look up the quote. I'll quote it in another video, but I'm just paraphrasing right now. But Pope Leo the Great said this, and it was infallibly defined, that heresy is the gates of hell. So when Jesus says to St. Peter, and the gates of hell will not prevail against this church. And I'm Peter, on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will never prevail against it. Matthew 16. So the church solemnly defined what Jesus meant by the gates of hell. And they clarified it meant heresy. So heresy is what separates one from the church. It is contradicting the core tenets of the Catholic Church. So that's what separates you from the church. It's very important to point that out. And that's the gates of hell. So no heretic can be Catholic. They may look Catholic, they may act Catholic, they may have priestly garbs on or a papal robe on. But if they're committing heresy, they're not Catholic anymore. It should be said that heresy first occurs in the heart. So God knows that person is not Catholic anymore. You may not know, but God knows. Heresy first occurs in the heart. But then when it is manifest to other people, that is when people, Catholics, need to avoid that person. And consider him non-Catholic, unless he repents. You must confront him, if it's possible. Get him to repent, and if he doesn't, you must still consider him non-Catholic and completely separate yourself from any religious communion. So John Paul II kissing the Quran, that's public, it's manifest. When he kisses it and there's a billion Muslims watching, he's effectively saying to them, go to hell. Because he's well aware that one of the dogmas of the Catholic Church, things you must believe to be saved, that there's no salvation outside the Catholic Church. Again, a core tenet of the Catholic faith. It is a dogma, just like the Trinity is a dogma, core tenets. If you disagree with one of these topics, you're now not Catholic anymore. That's the gates of hell. You've now separated yourself and passed through into the gates of hell. So he's saying to a billion Muslims, I hate you, because he knows the dogma. There's no salvation outside the Catholic Church. So that's just one example of recent times, John Paul II. Now I'm going to get back into Richard de Brani now in a second. So most Sedevacantists go back to Vatican II, which is 1958, set up by apostate anti-pope John the 23rd. And then after him, it was Paul VI, anti-pope Paul VI, then anti-pope John Paul I, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, Francis. They're all heretics. That's Vatican II. Now, as I said, I keep reiterating, 99% of Sedevacantists go by Vatican II. And they disagree on certain things. Now remember, Jesus said an incredibly important verse, I usually use it in reference to Protestants, that there's only one church. There can be no disagreement. There's a ton of verses that support this, but there's one in particular that stood out to me and it converted me to Catholicism in the first place. Matthew 18:17. He who does not hear my church is a heathen and a publican. So what Jesus is saying there is one church. Because if you're hearing a different church or something that contradicts that church he's referring to, then you're not Catholic. You're not in his church. So therefore there's one church. So when you have all these disagreements, putting aside the Protestants, we have a million different disagreements. But in these Sedevacantist groups, there's all sorts of different disagreements. So you have to discern which is the truth. Who knows? Now I have to do all this research and go through all the dogmas of the church and who is actually holding the dogmas and listen to all these arguments and oh man, what confusion. Maybe I'll just stick with the what I know. Even though they're supporting LGBT marriage and they're saying Muslims and Jews can go to hell. Even I know that the the Catholic Church teaches you need to be Catholic to be saved, but they're teaching these things. I'm so confused. That's what the average normie is thinking. And when you take the faith seriously, now you look at all these sedevacantist groups, especially I would put top of the list the Diamond Brothers or MHFM, SSP5. The CMRI. There's a few groups that are predominant, but there's many sedevacantist groups. And again, it's confusing to the average normal person. I personally ended up going to the Diamond Brothers, but then I discovered Richard Abrani's work. Now I have a lot to say about Richard Abrani and how he's a heretic, idolater, and mortal sinner, obstinate mortal sinner, and he betrayed me, and I'll be exposing him. But I'll explain why he has the true faith. And God had made it incredibly obvious. As Jesus says, "Come to me like little children." The faith should be simple, a child should understand. And a child should understand when John Paul II kisses that Quran. He's like, that's weird. Why is he doing that? Why do I have to be Catholic if he's kissing this Muslim book? Maybe you have to become Muslim. It's common sense. Simple. Keep it simple. And that's one of my main objectives, is to keep things simple. So again, you've all these sedevacantist groups, and it's confusing. There's many of them. Which one do you choose? There can only be one church. They can't all be saved. They're either all wrong or one of them is right. Now, Richard Abrani has done work on the faith surpassing all of these groups, making it so obvious that he has the faith over all of these groups that even a child can understand. So just like the John Paul II example I gave you, kissing the Quran, I'm going to give you an example what he points out that no other sedevacantist group acknowledges. So that's the desecration of Catholic places. If you look throughout the Renaissance period, all over the cathedrals, churches, St. Peter's Basilica itself, all over the Vatican, there are pagan gods, idols, nudes, pornography, grotesque deformity, mythology. It's everywhere. Devils, everywhere. All over the churches. This is idolatry. And it's promoting in terms of nudity or pornography, it's promoting, it's glorifying sin. It's one thing to sin. That's just a sin. So take the homosexual. He commits the sin, but he hides it because he's ashamed. That's a natural reaction to sin, to be ashamed of something. But it's very different to promote the sin. Now you've stepped into heresy, because now you're saying an evil thing is good. So make that very important distinction when you now step from being ashamed of sin to promoting it. So one is sin. You're still Catholic, but you're a bad Catholic. You need to go to confession. And the other, you're a heretic. You've now lost the Catholic faith. You've now separated yourself from the church. So besides the fact that there are idols, pagan idols and pagan gods all over these churches, there's nudes, and that's heresy. Because you're now glorifying nudity or glorifying pornography in some cases. This is throughout the whole Renaissance period, and Richard was the only person exposing this. So one example, so he goes back to 1130. 1130 is his date. That's when he has proof why we had no pope since 1130. Now I'll just give you one example. The Filaret door, that's the front door of St. Peter's Basilica. That was commissioned by Antipope Eugene IV. And that door contains all of the above. Nudity, pornography, grotesque deformity, idols, false gods, mythology, everything that you can think of. It's on the front door of St. Peter's Basilica. So every single pope after that point, we know, seen that door and approved of it, didn't destroy it. We know everyone after 1445 is an idolater and a heretic for glorifying sin. There's an image of Zeus raping Ganymede. If anybody doesn't know, Ganymede is a boy in Greek mythology, so that's pederasty. Life imitates art. What's been going on in the Vatican since then? The abuse crisis has not just been the last, 100 years. It's been going on a long time. You have to read the evidence on that. But that's minor compared to heresy or idolatry. So 1445, I've just proven to you, just Google the Filaret door. I'll be posting videos on the desecration of Catholic places so you can see these images. I'm sure you're all aware of them. Just think of Michelangelo's David. The great King David, naked and effeminate as well. Michelangelo made him in an effeminate way. And there's actually a Donatello's David as well, also nude and effeminate. Just think about that for a second. King David is a great saint. We know nudity is immoral. That's number 2. And these popes, these anti-popes, anti-cardinals, anti-bishops, anti-priests, they approved of this for centuries. And I don't want to hear any comebacks, by the way. This is, as I said before, a child can understand this. That little sheep can understand this. So imagine David is a great saint, portrayed as naked. Donatello did the same thing. Now imagine he's a saint, so that means if the anti-popes approved of this, that means you could do the same thing with St. Peter. Make a nude of him, make a big statue of him, put him outside the churches in the Vatican. St. Peter, St. Paul, Mary. You see how disgusting this is? I shouldn't even have to go that far. Nudity is mortal sin. To promote it is heresy. It's to say a sin is good. So, Richard Abrani is the only person exposing this. Okay? Out of all the sedevacantist groups, not one of them, except for Richard's group, of Mary's Little Remnant, but Richard in particular, who led the charge, he exposes this, and no other sedevacantist. Just think, these hyper-traditionalists, not one of them. They can condemn John Paul II kissing the Quran, but they can't condemn a naked Zeus in their church. So according to them, I can have all these pagan gods all over my house, nude, and I can still be Catholic. Not only that, as I said, 99% go back to Vatican II. That means they consider Antipope Pius X a saint. Antipope Pius X is considered a saint, and he had all these things throughout the Vatican. I mean, it's rampant. So that means, according to them, not only can I have a Buddha in my house, or a naked Zeus, or devils all over the place, but that I can be a great saint as well. Not just Catholic, but a great saint. Now, just see how absurd that is. and how a little child can see through that. The faith is simple, a child can understand it. So I've just dismantled the Diamond Brothers, CMRI, SSP5, all the other sedevacantists that don't go back before the Renaissance period. So you can now dismiss every one of them. You can dismiss the nominal Catholic Church with anti-Pope Francis at the head. You can dismiss the SSPX, who claim to be traditional, but they're in communion with Francis, therefore they're guilty of all the same heresies. They haven't separated themselves. They're part of the gates of hell because they're in communion. And you can dismiss all these sedevacantists. You're left with Richard O'Brien and Emma Lore. Now, I was with Emma Lore for about 5 years. A big change occurred when I joined. They were kind of stagnant. I set up a social media platform on Discord where everybody could meet up. I'd brought people in from Ireland, and we all got to meet up. Richard joined, everybody else joined, and things started to enliven. It was kind of stagnant before, and now things are vibrant. Now, some people fell away, they came back, that's quite common. And then a lot more people came in. Now, when I say a lot more, I'm talking about 10, 20 people. That's a lot from our perspective. We're in the end times church, where Jesus said in Luke 18:8, when the Son of Man returns, do you think he will even find the faith on earth? Very few will be saved. Don't let numbers perturb you. Matthew 24:37, when the Son of Man returns, it'll be like the days of Noah. Nobody believed Noah except for his family, 8 people total. It's the same case in these days. As Jesus says, it'll be the same as if in the days of Noah when he returns. When the Son of Man returns, it'll be like the days of Noah. When the Son of Man returns, will he even find the faith on earth? See, the Catholic faith is eternal. You don't need any Catholics. There could be no Catholics in the world, and the Catholic faith survives. Now, granted, in the end times, we know for absolute certainty that there will be Catholics in the end because we know there's 2 witnesses at the end times. But it'll be a small number. Now, small is relative, so, I mean, if you had 10 million Catholics in the world, that's still very small compared to the world's population. And I do expect we will have numbers in the millions at some point. It's amazing, actually, the things I'm pointing out to you, how simple it is. And there's only 30 in that group. And think of there's 1.5 billion so-called Catholics out there, and none of them can condemn nudes and idols, pagan gods in churches. None of them. Only 30 people in the whole world. How many billion people in the world now? 7 billion? 1.5 billion Catholics, so-called Catholics? So as I said, I was with Richard O'Brien for about 5 years. Set up Discord, got more vibrant, then people all over the world started joining. We got to about, I believe, around 30 people, I'm not sure. And a lot of positive memories. I had little issues with Richard. I mean, his personality is very brash. I mean, I'm just talking about the last 5 years now, just while I was with them. Like, I didn't have serious issues, but yeah, his personality is very brash. He can be rude. He can be abrasive. He did misrepresent me many times, and I just had to bite my tongue. Now I've come to realize some of the instances were more serious than I realized. It actually amounts to idolatry. But only recently I left, and that was there was an incident on St. Bridget's Day, one of Ireland's patron saints, St. Bridget, on the first of the second month. And I pretty much left them the following day. Now I'm going to go into that in detail. There's no need to go into that into detail right now. But my following videos will, one of my main As I begin here now, this new YouTube channel, as you can see here, The Lost Sheep of Jesus. I have a Twitter page, The Lost Sheep of Jesus, and I have a Facebook page, same thing, Lost Sheep of Jesus. So it's all pretty conform to the same brand, let's say. Now, my email there, by the way, is where is my email? The Lost Sheep of Jesus at gmail.com. Praise be to God that was available. Everything is just lining up perfect. The Lost Sheep of Jesus at gmail.com. If you want to save your soul, you need to email me. I'm now the leader of the lay leader of what's the remnant of the Catholic Church in these end times. My job is pretty simple: to save souls, to evangelize. What do you need to save your soul? Follow God's commandments. There is a minimum requirement for all Catholics, and that's what my focus will be. Everything after that, once you know the minimum requirements, everybody knows the minimum requirements, everything after that, pray to your Father in secret. There's going to be no spiritual snobbery here. There's a minimum requirements for a reason. Of course, I encourage people to organize events, rosary sessions, getting together, absolutely. But never make someone feel bad. There is a minimum requirements to be saved. In particular, I want you to focus on the 5 pillars. I believe this is 6th, but let's focus on 5 pillars. Richard has 4, but officially he has 3 pillars, but he does include a 4th. So the first pillar is prayer, and I'm going to use his analogy here. It's a very good analogy. So prayer. So we're going to compare this to a car. Prayer is like fuel for the car. You're not going to move the car without prayer. So you need all these pillars to be saved. And I will outline what prayers you need to do as a minimum. After that, you can do as many as you want. Just don't neglect your other duties. So prayer is like fuel for the car. The car is not going to move if you do not pray. So you're not going to get to your destination, that is heaven, without prayer. Next is penance. Second pillar. And penance is knowing how to fix the car, understanding the car and how to fix the car, to repair it. So we need to chastise ourselves, as St. Paul reiterates many times. Keep our body under chastisement, and it toughens you up. One common penance I recommend is cold showers, whether it be for 30 seconds or for a minute. That's a penance. Any kind of laborious work is a penance. I'll go into more detail on different types of penance. Involuntary penances, where God actually gives you penances, and then voluntary ones. And so you need to know how to fix your car, how the car works, to know how the car works. Actually, sorry, muddling that up. It's how to fix the car. So you need to maintain it, how to maintain the car. And then how to know to drive the car is the third pillar. That is studying the Catholic faith. You need to study how to learn how to drive this car. You need to study the Catholic faith. Now, in the past, I would say that most people in history who were saved were simple laymen, farmers. They just knew what they needed to do to get saved, went to mass, did all the rest, what they need to do. But they were simple. And there was not much need for, let's say, heavy study. Even the minimum requirements, I'm not going to say there's too much. It should never be burdensome. You should have plenty of time for your work, all your other duties, and recreation, which I'll get onto in a second. I would say for study, you need to do at least 1 hour a week. And that's not much at all. Some people have vocations that require you to do a lot more than that. and you're going to have a work with your conscience on how much you should really be studying, because only you know how much you can be doing. Just never burden yourself. That's all I'll say. So you must study the Catholic faith, but especially in these days of the great apostasy. We're not just simple farmers now. We have to expose anti-Pope Francis, all these apostate bishops and priests, all these false traditionalists, especially the false sedevacantists, and especially Richard de Brani, because he's the closest to us. Again, I'll go into reasons why you cannot follow Richard de Brani. You'll end up in hell. But you can understand why study is so important. You need to know the issues, at least at a basic level, for most people. At a basic level, understand the issues. And then some people are called to refute, to evangelize, to be a priest someday. You need to know a lot more. And so study is incredibly important. The fourth pillar, very important, is recreation. If you don't recreate, you won't go to heaven. So we discussed the fuel for the car, it's your prayer. Maintaining the car, that's your penance. And knowing how to drive the car, it's your study. So you're now actually driving the car. You're able to drive the thing in a straight line. But why do you drive the car? You drive the car because you want to get to heaven. And in heaven, it's not just staring at God all day long. No. That's actually, we call that the heresy, the blob God heresy. The main reason for recreation is to avoid stoicism, spiritual snobbery. But most importantly, to enjoy God's creation. All the good things he gives us. Now bear in mind, we're in a fallen world. But God gave us good things. We still have good things to enjoy. The food you eat, the alcohol, sports, movies, our pets, animals, nature, the beauty of creation. God let it go so far, but he left enough for us to enjoy. As St. Paul says, no man knows what is to come in the kingdom of heaven. I'm not quoting that greatly, but it's paraphrasing. No man knows what's in heaven, but he gave us enough to know what these good things are and why we enjoy them. This is the why. We're getting to heaven because we can enjoy God and his creation. Worship God and enjoy his creation. Everything good comes from God. He is love itself. All these good things come from that loving creator that we have. And so people who condemn alcohol, for example, they're now considered a Stoic. They're calling a good thing evil. Of course, alcohol you need to drink in moderation. You can't get drunk. That's a mortal sin. Everybody's different. Some people can have 1 or 2 pints of beer, or whether it's whiskey or wine. But again, we're enjoying God's creation. It's reminding of us of this kingdom of God that we are looking forward to. It motivates us. It's that motivation. So that's the fourth pillar. You must do recreation, at least 1 hour a day, and more on the Lord's Day. It's a day of rest. And the fifth pillar, now I'm trying to tie in this into the analogy. Let me think about it. But the fifth pillar is acting on the faith. It doesn't matter how much prayer you do or study. or penance. If you don't act on the faith when your duty calls for it, you'll end up in hell. So it's a minimum requirement. So again, I'm trying to tie it into the analogy. The analogy is good already, but let's just say there's things you need to do on this journey between here and heaven. On your journey, there's things you need to do. You must act on the faith. That's the fifth pillar. All of these pillars are based on the foundation of love, the primary pillar. Doesn't mean you believe in a mushy teddy bear god, as Richard calls it. It's a false god. God punishes people in hell. Jesus said, so I give you verses, is only a remnant in the last time, in the end times. But Jesus also says that most people go to hell, even in normal times. So Matthew 7:13-14. Enter ye into the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there that go in therein. How narrow is the gate and strait the way that leadeth to life, and few there that find it. So wide is the gate that leadeth to destruction, and narrow is the gate that leadeth to life, and few there that find it. God punishes evildoers in hell. There's some, to normal people, what would be considered difficult topics: corporal punishment, slavery, servitude, the death penalty, that you must punish your children. Never more and above than what's necessary. He that God loveth, he chastiseth. If God isn't punishing you, or just a father doesn't punish his child, they're allowed to keep on sinning. And it's the same reason why God punishes us. If he doesn't punish you, we're now getting into curses. We're in the curse of prosperity now. Imagine you're on the road to hell, on that wide road that most people walk, and there's nothing to stop you because you're not getting punished, because you're sinning, but you're not getting punished for it. God has removed his grace. If he had given you grace, he would have punished you in your sins, on your road in the road to hell. He would have punished you in your sins. But he doesn't. He that's why just punishment is a good thing. So you need to get rid of this teddy bear God. All of this will become much more clear in time when you start studying. Not just the dogmas of the Catholic faith, the magisterium as we call it, the solemn magisterium, the ordinary magisterium, but also the Bible and the Old Testament Bible, and merging the New Testament with the Old Testament. It's the same God. And they teach these things in the New Testament too. So we'll be going over these tough topics. It's very important. Get them out of the way. After that, it's clean sailing. But they're very important topics because we're living in a world dominated by the curse of prosperity, especially in these Western cultures, where you think you have everything you need, as opposed to, say, a communist culture, which is also evil. So you have the hyper-capitalist, hyper-communist. Both are evil. But actually the hyper-capitalist is more evil because, again, it's the curse of prosperity. Whereas, at least in communism, you know it's evil, it's in your face, and you know you're getting punished by God. And therefore you can repent and convert and end up in heaven. So whatever happens here on earth is irrelevant. If you get to heaven, it should be your primary prayer, whatever it takes to get to heaven. Just let me get to heaven, God. But in these hyper-capitalist countries, you have this curse of prosperity, and there's nothing stopping you. You have all these distractions. There's nothing wrong with money, nothing wrong with riches. Only some people idolize money. That's a problem, obviously. You must be willing to give up everything. That doesn't mean riches are bad or evil. Anyway, I'll be getting into many different topics. I'm going to keep this simple and short. This is an introduction to the lost sheep of Jesus, the last remnant of the Catholic Church. I'll be mostly for the next month and a month or so. So as I said, on Pentecost Day, that's when officially we start. That's when I officially consider myself a Catholic. Right now, I'd consider myself like a catechumen. I'm getting over this incidents with Mary's Little Remnant leaving Richard Abrani. I kind of have to leave some room to work out this big mess that's been caused by Richard, and also hopefully by Pentecost Day it'll be all in the past, and I won't have to deal with it anymore. But until then, one of my primary concerns will be refuting Richard, exposing Richard. Very important concept. The closer you are to the faith, but you're not in the faith, the more dangerous you are. It's kind of like the devil. One of his strategies is a drop of poison in the well and will kill the whole community. And that's just poison. They could be Catholics and end up going to heaven. Just kill the body. Don't fear man, what man can do to you, kill the body, but fear God who can destroy the body in hell. But the devil uses not just poison, but heresy. And it'll just be a drop, one little drop of heresy. It's enough to kill the whole community. And we're not just killing the body here now, we're talking about killing the soul. That's how deadly heresy is. I want you to start meditating on these words that are not used today: heresy, hell, dogma. So Richard represents that small drop of poison, and it's incredibly deadly. So Satan, again, his strategies are very rarely in your face. Back to the kind of communism versus capitalism thing. Communism's in your face evil. You know it's evil. Whereas capitalism is far more deceptive. Nothing wrong with private enterprise and trade and all the rest. If you don't regulate it, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, economics, but it's far more deceptive when it's hidden. So like the child predator is not going to go up to the child, oh, with a big grimace on his face, I'm evil, you know. No, he'll go with a smile on his face, and he'll have some candy or sweets. That's another one of Satan's tactics. He will appear nice. And so I have to refute Richard Abrani. That's my main focus. Up until Pentecost Day, I hope. We'll see what happens. For all I know, they could repent. I gave Richard opportunities to repent. I went to him privately on topic by topic, kept it simple with him. And he wouldn't. And I'm not talking about vague stuff, I mean very obvious, provable sins. And he won't even acknowledge it. I have a lot more, let's say, harsh, stern words to say about him. I'm just keeping this very simple. This is for new people. This video is specifically for people who are trying to find the faith, and maybe they're aware of Richard because you might have seen my videos, or you were with him before, Let me just say for people who were with him before, this is going to be very different. I need you to accept, no matter who it is, I need you to accept the dogmas. That'll be a fact. The same dogmas that Richard believes in. So in his profession of faith, except for the one, of course, where you have to obey Richard. But everything else you must agree to become Catholic. Without exception. But I'm sure, because I've seen Richard and how he really is now, spending 5 years with them, I'm the first member to actually attack them, as should have been done. But anybody who left, who didn't attack them is a coward, and God cannot work with cowards. Because if you left them, then you think Richard. If you believe you're Catholic, you believe Richard is either a heretic or an obstinate mortal sinner. It's now your duty to warn everybody and attack. If you don't do that, you're in schism. So you're either a coward or a schismatic. God can't work with a coward. And the attacks on me will be ferocious, I'm sure. Richard is very malicious. But I can handle it. God has given me a lot of gifts. But again, to all those people who left Richard or are aware of Richard, or maybe they just heard his voice and it's like, this guy is very over the top. You're right, he is over the top. He's a bit of a drama queen, to be quite honest. There's a time and place for his, what I call, tone. It's the John the Baptist tone. Everybody has their personality and their gifts, and it's a gift of his, that John the Baptist tone. It's one of his gifts. He's also, in my opinion, the best researcher and scribe in the world. Best, considering what he's done. Again, doesn't mean he's acting on the faith, but he is the best researcher, best scribe. I mean, look at Jesus and the apostles, John the Baptist admonishing the scribes and Pharisees. What did John the Baptist say? God can change any one of these rocks into a child of Abraham. So don't be high-minded, Richard. You can turn any one of these rocks into a man who can dig up the Catholic faith or understand the Catholic faith. Don't be high-minded. But yeah, the John the Baptist type, so he is that John the Baptist type, and it's a very important personality to have. And you want to bring him out when you have nominal Catholics to admonish, apostate Jews, people who are supposed to represent the faith, or in the case of apostate Jews, they're God's chosen people. They're supposed to become Catholic in these end times. They're supposed to follow Christ, the Messiah. And that's when you bring out the John the Baptist. Or if there's, of course, like a King Herod type, so kings and rulers need to be admonished as well. There's a time and place for Richard's tone, let's say, the John the Baptist type. So he might have been put off by his tone, for example, but look, there's a time and place for that. If he repents, he'll be put in his place. He'll be just researcher, scribe. He will teach now and then because he is a good teacher. He just needs to be toned down. If other people in the group convert, they would be excellent teachers as well. I have a few in mind, and it'll be a lot more diverse. But everything will be toned down. Everything. And my main job is to make sure everybody's doing their minimum requirements and that there's no dissensions, envies, gossips, especially these sins. Anything to do with calumny, detraction, envy, gossip, exaggeration, detraction. These things are like viruses. Now, my background, I'm trained in picking up on these things from a distance, as will be proven when I expose Richard and his group. That's why God has chosen me to do this job now. And that'll be my main concern. I'll be teaching, of course, but my main concern is getting people to heaven. Minimum requirements, tone it down, and have the crack, lads. We're led by the Irish church now. It's not Richard O'Brien and these brash. I'll go at him here. He's a bull in a china shop, brash, bombastic. He has no clue about communication skills. He doesn't understand people. To be none of that. We're dealing with the Irish now. We're master communicators, understanding people. Patience, charity is another thing Richard is abysmal at. He admits himself actually about the patience thing, but he doesn't have charity either. He abhors justice, abhors it in his actions. None of that will happen with me. There'll be no gossip, no envy, no detraction, calumny. Won't be tolerated. As I said, we'll have the crack. So I'll be using Irish expressions every now and then. I don't mean crack cocaine. In Ireland, we say, "You up for the crack?" or "What's the crack?" I mean, is there any fun? Or "What's up?" Where's the fun here? So the fun, what's the crack? Or we'll be having the crack. We'll be having fun. That'll be very important. Tone it down. Have a bit of fun. I hope a few musicians convert, especially from Ireland. One of my loves is taking part in Irish music sessions, people jamming together, watching movies together. I have a slew of videos that are censored, all sorts of genres, whether it's action, thriller, religious movies, of course. I have a load of them, of course, from Richard and his group, who did a lot of work on that. And just finally, on Richard's work itself, anything good that he's produced was from God. Okay? And if Richard falls away, he does not own that work. He doesn't have any claim on that work. Only true Catholics have the claim on the Catholic faith. I know Richard is not Catholic anymore, therefore I am claiming all that work. It's God's work, and it belongs to me. It belongs to all good Catholics. So I'll end on that. Praise be to God and his great goodness, through Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Amen.